Dave Talks Comics, Episode 104, Samurai Jack, Season 1. Welcome to Dave Talks Comics, the program where I talk about comic books I have read, cartoons I have watched, and comic book conventions to which I've gone. Most episodes are a mix of summary and opinion of what I've read or watched, and usually include spoilers. All past episodes can be streamed or downloaded from the program's website, davetalkscomics.com. On this episode, I'll be talking about Season 1 of Samurai Jack. I'm not going to be talking about every single episode from this season, but I will be highlighting a few of the episodes that I enjoyed the most. Samurai Jack is one of my favorite cartoons, I think, of all time. I was recently going through an old blog of mine, and I found a comment which tells me exactly when I started watching it. It was November 25th, 2001, which was sometime in the middle of Season 1, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. But I started watching that, and I started watching Justice League at the same time, and I had completely forgotten about writing that down, and I honestly could not have pinpointed it as precisely as that, but I probably would have said that it was sometime during the first season that I started watching it. And actually, based on looking at the original air dates of some of these episodes that I'm going to talk about, I think that the first one that I'm going to talk about was actually the first one that I probably watched. Although I have a clear memory of watching it back then. I don't have a clear memory of that being the very first one. I don't have a clear memory of it. I'm pretty sure I did not see the original episodes, the original story. And the original Samurai Jack story was a three-parter. I'm not sure if it was originally broadcast as one story or as a three-parter, but now it's always presented as a three-parter. And each of the parts kind of have their own arc. But they basically tell the story, which is presented at the beginning of every episode of Samurai Jack, which is of how he fought the demon Aku, how he almost defeated Aku, and then Aku threw him through a portal in time, and he wound up in the future. And in the time between the time he was thrown in through the portal and the time that he arrives, Aku has conquered the earth. And the overlying or the overarching theme or mission of Jack is to get back to the past. So in the three-parter, which you get in the first part, what you get is what happened in the past, his battle with Aku in the past. And I don't know if they ever really specify which time period he's from, or if they tell you enough. I mean, it's certainly not from, I don't think it would be from the 19th century. I think it would probably be earlier than that, but I'm based on my limited knowledge of Japanese history. But I really don't know. So the first episode ends with him getting thrown into the future. The second episode is him in the future, or the present at that point, and him kind of negotiating, figuring out where he is, how things work, the culture shock of being in a completely different setting than he was just moments before. And then in the third episode is him, and the third episode is kind of a lot like a lot of the episodes. It's him helping some people fight back against Aku or against Aku's forces, which are usually robots. So there's 13 episodes in the first season. I'm not going to talk about all 13. I'm going to talk about 4 of them, and all 4 of these I really love. There's probably more that I could have talked about. I don't love all of the episodes equally, but I think these 4 are definitely, if you haven't tried Samurai Jack, these 4 are a great place to begin. You could begin with the origin story, But like I said, it's explained at the beginning of every episode. The setup is explained. So the first episode I'm going to talk about is numbered number 6, but if you look at the order it aired in, it was not the 6th episode aired. But it's called Jack and the Warrior Woman. And this one takes place in a desert environment. And throughout this series, Jack is wandering the earth, trying to find a way back to the past. And so in this episode, he's in a desert. He's in a desert city is where it opens. He's walking through a market. He finds this store, he's looking for somebody who is supposed to have information on a jewel of power, which possibly has the power to send him back into the past. And he meets this shop owner, and the shop owner, it's kind of comical at first because the shop owner misinterprets what he wants, and there's a good deal of humor in this. It is a cartoon after all. And anyway, so Jack gets attacked by Aku's robots, who are these, and they're always they're not always different. You'll see some that reoccur throughout the series, but these are wielding scimitars. They're kind of tall and have kind of dressed like, I guess, desert dwellers, or the people from the Middle East are sometimes depicted as being dressed, at least at that time, at least in the distant past, or so he gets separated from his sword. It doesn't look good for Jack, and then this woman steps in, this warrior woman, this green-skinned warrior woman who you later learn her name's Ikra. And together they escape they fight the robots, and then they take off. They escape from the city on these creatures called uklas, which are kind of like camels, as she describes it. But to get them to move, you have to say, hut, hut, hut. And Jack starts saying, yeah, or something like that, and nothing happens. And it's hut, hut, hut. And so they cross the desert, and there's this great part. It's a wordless trip. There's music to accompany it and sound effects, but there's no words spoken as they're crossing through the desert. They battle monsters. They meet some people who live out in the desert, and then eventually they find this oasis where this jewel is, because before Jack got attacked by the robots sent by Aku, he did get the information, a description of how to find the jewel that he was looking for, and he has to look for this, and it had to do with following the sun and the moon, and so he and Ikra take off, and as they cross the desert, you also get this kind of flirtatious relationship between Jack and Ikra, and so finally they arrive at the oasis, and one of the things that they were told was that in order to you have to be of pure heart in order to take possession of this jewel, and there's a guardian who is this giant monster who guards the jewel, and he kind of sends this beam of light down onto Jack and Ikra, and then rejects them. And Jack doesn't know what to do, but Ikra attacks. And then in the process of this of fighting this guardian of the jewel, she shapeshifts, and she changes into this flying creature, and then she grows real tall, and Jack is just stunned by all this, but she defeats the guardian, and she gets the jewel, but then she smashes it, and then it's revealed that she is actually Aku. And actually, if Jack had been paying attention through this episode, he would have known this, because there were moments in this, there was certainly a warning early on by the shopkeeper, which he ignored, or he misinterpreted. There was other signs in the episode where he should have seen that something was wrong. Certainly when the guardian rejected them, that something was wrong with Ikra. And Ikra had told him this story about her father who had been imprisoned by Aku, and how she wanted to free him. But of course Ikra is actually Aku. Now the interesting thing is that Ikra's voice is not, of course, done by the same actor that does Aku's voice, even though it is the same person. And they got another voice actor, and I think this is the only time in this series that they got somebody else to come in and do Aku's voice. And I know Aku shape shifts, but I think for the most part I'm not sure if it's Mako or Mako is the name of the actor who does the voice of Aku. He also did the voice of Uncle Iroh on Avatar: The Last Airbender, the TV series. I think just for the first 2 seasons, because I believe he died either right around the beginning of the 3rd season when they were making it, and they had to bring somebody else in to imitate his voice. And I don't know if they downplayed his role a little bit because of that. So there was definitely warning signs, which Jack did not see. There was and the other thing, I really liked the desert trip. I really liked the music they used in that. And I thought it was interesting that they had Aku disguised as a woman. And this is the only time this happens. And that there was actually, flirting between them. It almost seemed like love was in the air. There was something going on there. And then it turns out that that Ikra is actually Aku. So that's not something, I guess you don't see that too frequently on cartoons. And this is definitely something that, although it has, I think it could be enjoyed by adults as well as kids, because there is so much in these episodes, and I'll get more into this, but in the visuals and in the music and the sound effects that they do. The second episode that I want to talk about is Jack and the 3 Blind Archers. I think this one won an award, but I'm going to have to look that up because I'm not certain on that. But this and the previous episode have something in common, which they don't have in common with the other 2 episodes. And that is that both of these episodes are ones in which Jack, the whole episode is focused around him finding something which is supposed to allow him to travel back to the past. And this isn't every episode, but there's a lot of episodes that are like this. There's some creature that can grant him a wish or something like that. And that's kind of what happens here. Of course, well, no, I won't say that. So anyway, this episode opens with a very big, a long scene. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long, which is all this. You see this robot army attacking this tower, which has a magic well at the top of it, as we later learn. And there's only one word spoken through the entire sequence, but it's just beautifully done, the way the scenes are done, the split screens, the way things happen, and it's just, you see this robot army, which it has a human leader, but everything else, all the other members of this army are robot, although, yeah, pretty much are robots, and they attack this tower with this magic well at the top, but you see these arrows. There's only 3 archers at the top, and that you see them firing just thousands of arrows, and they basically decimate this army, even though it's a fairly big army. And then you segue to a scene where Jack's learning about this well, and that this is the well of King Osric, and it's supposed to be able to grant wishes. And so Jack travels to the island where this well is found, and he makes his first attempt at trying to get to the top of this tower. And he can't even get close to the tower on this first attempt. As soon as he steps into the glade, into the opening that surrounds the tower, because the tower is in a forest, but there's a glade surrounding it, an open area surrounding the tower. And as soon as he steps into it, the arrows start flying out at him. At first, the first arrow just lands between 2 of his toes, and then more arrows start coming, and he finally has to retreat back into the forest, at which point the arrows stop flying at him. But he sees the archers, and so then he goes and he meditates under a waterfall. And there's snow on the ground. It's winter at this point. There's snow on the ground, and he reminisces about training when he was younger, and training blindfolded. And so then what he does is he puts on a blindfold and he starts meditating blindfold with the blindfold on. and he listens to all the sounds around him, and you see him visualizing things. So at first everything's black, and then he hears a sound, and then he starts to see the picture of what that sound is. So he hears deer, he hears birds, he hears water dripping. It even gets to the point where he can hear snow falling, or he can hear snowflakes hitting the ground. That's how acute his senses get in this short period of time. So in his second attempt, he's successful, but there's a twist. And the twist is, well, what he does is when he gets to the top, he manages to free the three archers. It turns out that the well is evil. And the well, they were three who had traveled to the well a long time ago, and they had wished to become the most powerful warriors in the world. And the well had trapped them. And so he's about to make a wish when one of them warns him that the well exacts a price. It does not. And you see this anguish on his face when he learns the true nature of the well, when he learns how evil it is and what it did to these men, and his frustration because he thought he was there. He thought he had found the thing which was going to allow him to travel to the past, to go back and defeat Aku, and it's not there. And so he destroys the well and walks off into the sunset. And my only quibble with this episode is it wasn't clear to me how he knew that the archers were blind. I mean, they obviously have some sort of a covering over their face, but it looks like they've got eyes. So it wasn't clear to me how he knew they were blind. But, that's a minor quibble. Once again, the real magic of these episodes is the visuals. It's how they put the pictures together. It's, how they animate it. And it's also the music and the sound effects that they put in there. The third episode from season 1 that I'm going to talk about is Jack and the Lava Monster. Now this one, he's not questing to find an item, or he's presumably questing to find something to get him back, but that's not what this episode is about. The episode begins with Jack traveling through this kind of desolate wasteland, and he hears this voice that's calling to him. It says, "Come to me. Come to me," and it's coming from this fiery mountain, this volcano. And so he heads there, and he finds a way into the mountain. He finds passageways in the mountain, caves, and he goes deeper and deeper in the mountain. And there's all these traps in the mountain where he has to jump through things. There's it's kind of like a video game is what it's like, and so he has to jump through things. There were stalactites that are falling down from the ceiling and things like that. There are places where he jumps. There's pools of lava, but there are pieces of rock in the lava that he can jump across. But as he jumps on one, it starts to sink into the lava. So he has to jump to another one. He has to keep jumping across until he gets to an area where the rock is solid. So very video game-like, at least what I remember about video games, because I don't play a lot of video games myself. Very few these days. So he gets to the center of this volcano and he finds the lava monster. And what it turns, the lava monster wants to fight him. And what he discovers, the lava monster tells him his story, that he was once a man. He wasn't a monster. And he has been imprisoned there by Aku. And that he's been luring warriors since then, because it's been probably hundreds of years since he was imprisoned there by Aku. He can't die. Everybody he knew is gone. And at this point, he wants to fight. He wants to fall in battle. That's what he wants. He's basically a Viking. He tells his story to Jack. And the neat thing there is the style of the art is different when the warrior tells his story. And you just have the warrior's narration. You don't have, you see Aku, but Aku is drawn kind of differently, and the way they draw the people is differently than the people are drawn, the normal style of art for Samurai Jack. And so he's been imprisoned there for probably hundreds of years, maybe longer. It's unclear how far in the future Jack is at this point. And so Jack agrees to fight the man, the lava monster. And because, like I said, he's a Viking, he wants to go to Valhalla. And so Jack fights, Jack wins, and the man is freed from this body, from this lava monster-like body. And if you watch the episode, he goes into more detail about how he became the lava monster exactly, because Aku imprisoned him, but he didn't imprison him in this lava monster body. But anyway, Jack frees him, but immediately the man ages very quickly and dies. But before he dies, as he's dying, you see the Valkyrie come down, the warrior maidens come down to take him to Valhalla. And he they carry him off to Valhalla. You see him in Valhalla with what are presumably the gods, and because they're much taller than he is. Let's see, what else was there about this episode that I really liked? But it's once again, it's the journey. It's not the story itself. The story is very simple, but it's just the way it's told, both visually and the music, especially the part where Jack, the opening, I'd say half of the episode, where Jack is traveling to the mountain, traveling into the mountain, traveling through the traps, all of that I really liked. And then the warrior's tale was great. And the fight between Jack and the monster, it doesn't last very long. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of time left for it. That isn't the highlight of the episode, but it's really cool. I think I really like this stuff. The fourth and final episode that I want to talk about is Jack and the Scotsman. Now, the Scotsman is one of the only recurring characters. In fact, I think he's the only recurring character other than Aku that shows up in Samurai Jack. I don't think there's anybody else that shows up, other than there's a few characters who show up in flashbacks over the course of the series, I think, who might show up more than once, like his mother and his father. But in the present where the story is taking place, I think the Scotsman may be the only character who recurs. So this episode opens with Jack crossing a huge bridge. Well, the moorings for it are very big, and it's a very long bridge. It's so long that it takes days to cross this bridge, and it's not very wide. It's over this valley, I guess, and it's very foggy, so he can't see all the way across, and he probably couldn't anyway, considering that it takes days to cross this bridge, even if it was clear. So on the second day that he's crossing the bridge, because you actually see him sit down to go to sleep at one point because the moon has come up and the sun has set, and on the second day he encounters the Scotsman. Now, the Scotsman is this big, balding, kilt-wearing guy who's playing bagpipes, who one of his legs has been replaced by a machine gun. He's very foul-mouthed, and like Jack, he wields a magic sword. So what happens is they kind of arrive at an impasse because the bridge is so narrow. The Scotsman refuses to step aside, and so they end up getting into a fight, which basically lasts for another 24 hours. Because once again you see the sun go down, you see the moon come out, you see the sun come up again. They're still fighting now. They're very, very tired at this point, but they're still fighting. And at that point, all of a sudden these bounty hunters show up. And these bounty hunters kind of look like something out of, well, there's two movies that aspects of this episode made me think of, and those movies are The Defiant Ones and Deliverance. And that's because these bounty hunters look like something from out of one of those films. Well, certainly out of Deliverance is what they look like. But what ends up happening is the bounty hunters are apparently after both Jack and the Scotsman, although neither one realizes that. They think they're just after themselves. And the bounty hunters end up handcuffing Jack and the Scotsman together, which is what made me think of The Defiant Ones, which is a film from the late 50s, which starred Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier as two men who were on a chain gang who were trying to escape. I've seen it. It's been probably 30 years since I've seen it. But two men who were chained together who are trying to escape, and I don't remember all the details, but they are at odds. They don't like one another. And you see that you've got the same thing here with Jack and the Scotsman. You've got these two guys who hate one another, but are forced to work together to escape from the bounty hunters. So they end up jumping off the bridge and landing in a swamp, which is below the bridge, which is kind of appropriate considering the nature of the bounty hunters. And, I mean, one of them is kind of pig-like, who has a sheriff's badge, and then there's another one who seems to be carrying around a jug of moonshine, and there's another one that's there's a bunch of them that look like alligators, although those ones turn out to be robots later on. So basically, I mean, Jack and the Scotsman wind up in the swamp. Eventually, they encounter the bounty hunters again and defeat the bounty hunters. But, I mean, what makes this episode great? It's not the plot. It's the whole way it's done. It's the culture clash between the Scotsman and Jack. You know, Jack is very genteel in certain ways, and the Scotsman is very loudmouthed and, you know, just ready to hurls all kinds of insults at Jack, you know, and Jack is trying to reason his way through this, and the Scotsman doesn't want to hear anything about that, and it's just the clash of personalities. I mean, I just love it. And it's also the look and the sound of the bounty hunters. The sheriff bounty hunter talks in this way, which is just so, it's almost impossible. I've listened to this over and over again, and I can get like one or two words here and there that I can understand, and the rest of it is garbled. It's just completely garbled. Bang, 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 bang. Very hard to understand anything what he says, but so this is a great story, and that's basically, those are the 4 episodes I wanted to talk about in season 1 of Samurai Jack. This is basically a quarter of the run of Samurai Jack. There's 52 episodes in all, which then break down into 4 seasons of 13 episodes each. I'm planning to get back to this at some point, probably later in 2016. There's a bunch of other cartoons I want to get to before I get back to season 2 of Samurai Jack. But these are some great episodes. These are probably my favorites. I'd say these are my favorite episodes from season 1. There are some really good ones later on too. Not every episode is perfect, but if you haven't tried Samurai Jack, I'd say try some of these. And they're available on DVD, and I'm pretty sure you can get them for a reasonable price. I think if you just want to get an individual episode, you can find those on probably one of these streaming services like Amazon or Vudu or one of those if you just want to buy an episode or two. And I think actually you can probably find some of them on YouTube as well. Maybe a lot of them on YouTube. So that's it for season 1 of Samurai Jack. A couple final comments about Samurai Jack. First, on the subject of awards, Samurai Jack won a number of awards over the course of its 4 seasons. In the first season, the episode Jack and the Three Blind Archers won an Annie Award, which is an award for awards that are given to cartoons. And actually, it wasn't just that episode, but also the Jack and the Warrior Woman episode also won an award. One was for outstanding character design, and the other was for outstanding storyboarding. In addition, the three-part opening to Samurai Jack also won a Primetime Emmy for programming 1 hour or more. So I guess it must have been aired as a as a single piece for it to win an award like that. Oh, I'm sorry, it didn't win that award. It was nominated for that. Yeah, it was nominated. And finally, I just wanted to say that my descriptions of these shows can only begin to provide a hint of what these shows are like. Really, it's much more than just the story or the dialogue. It's also all the sounds that go with it, the soundtracks, and it's just the way they visually put these episodes together, the way they split screens, and just the way they put the images together. It's really just a thing of beauty, I think. This really is an outstanding show. That's it for episode 104 of Dave Talks Comics. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the internet at davetalkscomics.com and facebook.com/davetalkscomics. On Twitter at davetalkscomics. Email the show at davetalkscomics@gmail.com. I'm Dave. Thank you for listening.
So, you think you're better than me 'cause you're in a hurry? Well, I'm in a hurry too. But no, you didn't figure out, did you? That I might be an equal? No, you just consider yourself superior right off. You're rude.